Welcome back to the Meeple Marathon. Today we're going to be talking about how to play Fields of Eternia. So this is the European release of the Masters of the Universe board game, which is the same IP but a very different game from Clash for Eternia, which we've featured on the channel. This one, Clash for Eternia, is a skirmish style game, basically just a beat 'em up, maybe some area control type of stuff, but basically just going in and fighting. This one is much more of a dudes on the map type of game. There are encounters you can get into. There are battles with the other characters. There are quests you can go on. You can control certain areas. There are cards you can purchase, equipment, and vehicles, and spells. And there's various scenarios which vary greatly in what you're attempting to do and how you're attempting to win. The basics of the game are to play through all of the rounds, which this seems like a lot. However, your turns go rather quickly, and we'll talk about that here in a second. At the end of the rounds, you hopefully have acquired the most victory points. Or there's other scenarios where a specific event, like defeating a boss, for example, will activate the end game scenario, and then hopefully again you have the most victory points. So for the most part, the main way to score victory points in the game is through these victory point cards. So everybody's going to be dealt a card. Each character is going to be dealt a card at the beginning of the game, and you can see that there's each one of these has a top and bottom portion. So for example, this one here says during the preparation phase, your faction's heroes have at least 3 spells in total. And then down here, your faction's heroes have at least 4 spells in total. So this is a way to earn 1 victory points and then 2 victory points, so 3 total. Now some of them trigger at the end of the game. For example, this one, the armor. A friendly hero has an armor and an artifact equipped. Okay, so at any point in time, if one of your characters has those 2 things equipped, boom, you get a point. Then here at the end of the game, a friendly hero has attached an armor, an artifact, an ally, and a vehicle, or tamed a beast. So that's a lot more, but you wouldn't gain these 2 points until the end of the game. So again, once this token down here reaches the end of this track. So that's the main way to score victory points. The other ways are through your quest cards here. So every scenario is going to have a certain set of quest cards that you're going to be using, and you go on quests essentially where all of these little Q symbols are, and not all of these give you victory points. Some of them are epic beasts that you have to battle and then can tame, but then there's other ones like this where it gives you a little Dare has traveled back in time to learn the secrets of magic from Eldor and Hero. Keep this card in front of you. So if you are playing as the Masters of the Universe, capture and hold Eldor's village until the start of the next day. If you do, you get a point. Or if you're the villains, capture and hold Eldor's village until the start of the next day. They're exactly the same. The flavor text is a little different. But if you can accomplish that, Eldor's village is down here, then you would gain a victory point. Or there's other times where it will give you the option. Say, for example, here, if you complete this, you can either choose to either improve your battle deck, cull a card of your choice and add a +3, and we'll cover this, but this is a good card essentially, or gain 1 victory point, but you would get to choose. So that's the other way you can score victory points. Other than that, you'll be moving, assuming you are controlling one individual character, but if you play solo like me, you're going to control all 3. On your turn, you get to take 2 actions. And I'm going to cover all those actions here in just a second. And then at the end of your turn, you can take up to 2 free actions, and we'll talk about those. So the first thing that you can do on your turn is move. It's very basic. Almost every game like this has a movement action, but there's something we need to zoom in on and discuss before we talk about the movement action. Alright, so I've zoomed in on the map here just so you guys can see that there are differences between the various areas on the board. So there's areas like this that have what appear to be like a castle wall around them. So these are outposts, and they almost always have some type of graphic in the middle of them. You know, a castle, the Temple of Hordak, the village of Orkos. Even Hero's Crater down here has the crater in it. So all of those locations can have soldiers in them. Then there's the areas around the outside of those which just have kind of nature spread about. And these are very skinny areas, you'll notice. But your character, your standee, can be in that area. This is what they are considering the wilds. So if you are not in an outpost, like a populated area, you are in the wilds. Then, dividing the wilds up are two types of lines. A standard line, just like this, and then a dotted line like this. So it's important to note the difference between, say, this dotted line here and this line here, and the difference between this, like, outer wall area. All right? So I've zoomed back out here so you guys can see better what happens on a move action. Now, at the beginning of the turn, or the beginning of the game, everybody has just their basic move stat that's on their card here. And for the most part, it's 1. This leads to a very slow start to the game, in my opinion, because as an entire action, you take a movement action and you get 1 movement point. You can go, boom, that's it. Or you could spend 2 actions to go boom, boom, pass through the wilds and into Berserker's Castle here. That's, very straightforward. But there are ways to boost your movement. For example, you could, and we'll talk about how to get these, you could gain a vehicle. So here we see the Battle Ram here, which is, one of the favored toys, very thematic here. Gives you +2 movement. So as your movement action, you could go 1, 2, 3 and end up all the way over there. There are also areas on the board, for example, over here in Arachnia City, that are divided by water. In order to get from here to here, you can only travel where these arrows are. You have to have a flying characteristic. So some of the characters have innate flying. Otherwise, you'll have to find a vehicle that has flying. And nobody ever goes into the water. Now, if you control an outpost and another outpost in between, you can pass from one to the other along a dotted line. Remember, it was important that we knew the difference between the dotted lines and not dotted lines. You can pass along a dotted line between 2 points that you control as 1 movement. So essentially you're skipping the wilds to go from, say, this city to this city, and then if I even controlled, say, Horde Factory, for 2 points of movement, I could go all the way from Talok City to Horde Factory Works. All right. Well, how do you control these outposts, you say? Well, that's your next action. So your next action is going to be troop deployment. I don't think I'm saying that correctly. Hold on. It is Mobilize Soldiers. That's what it's called. My apologies. So mobilizing soldiers is when you're going to be utilizing these little small busts. You're either going to be placing them on the board or moving them from one outpost to the next. Now, I mentioned earlier that troops don't ever hang out in the wilds. They're always only ever going to be in one outpost or the other. So, if I have He-Man in Talok City here, and I want to be able to say that I control Talok City even when He-Man leaves, I can take the Mobilize Soldier action and I can place up to 3 of these little soldiers in Talok City. Or, if I'm already in a location in an outpost with soldiers as my Mobilize Soldiers action, I can send any number of them along a dotted line from one outpost to the next. I can also do this if I'm adjacent to, say, Talok City. So if I'm out here in the wilds, as long as I'm adjacent to the outpost I'm wanting to trigger, I can mobilize soldiers from one outpost to the next. I do not have to control this outpost. It just has to be free of enemies. So either has to be, I already have someone in here, so I could go like this. If I had 3 people here, I could send this guy so I even them out. Or if there's nobody here, I can send them. Or if, let's say say Man at Arms was there, I could send someone there. So those are your 2 options for mobilizing soldiers. Now, a lot of this game has to do, or a lot of the benefits you get from this game and the currency and the items you get are based on which of these outposts you control. So, before we move on to the next action, let's talk about how you gain those items. The currency in the game is Eternium, which I don't think is factual. I think this is made up. I don't think they ever discussed money in the cartoon, at least not that I remember, but Eternium it is. At the beginning of every day phase, so every time the token goes from night phase to day phase, at the beginning of that day phase, any outpost that you control, and that includes just you as a hero by yourself in an outpost, you're going to count up all the E symbols or Eternium symbols on those outposts. So there are some like our Arachnia City here, which have 2. There's even one I think that has 3, maybe not. Oh yeah, Aviopolis, it's up off the camera there, has 3. So you're going to count up all the E symbols that you can see on outposts you control, and you're going to gain that much Eternium, which is just the currency of the game. Also, at the end of any turn, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but we'll come back to this. You can purchase from these outposts which have these merchant icons, as long as you control said outpost. So if I control this one, I can purchase an equipment from this equipment deck here. If I control Eldor's village here, I could purchase a spell. And if I control, say, Horde Factory Works, I can purchase a vehicle. Alright, so that's why it's important to get these soldiers out there and spread them around and keep them in the outposts, fortify the important ones, because it's going to get you money and it's going to give you access to items. Alright, let's come back to our actions here. We've talked about movement and we've talked about mobilizing soldiers. The next one, and I'm going to get on my soapbox here in a second, but the next 2 have to do with encountering things on the map. So we've talked about wilds. That's the area outside of the outposts that sit between the outposts. They don't have any type of picture in them, and they're just kind of blank. If you are in the wilds, as an action, you can brave the wilds, which means you're going to take one of these encounter cards and draw one, or you can spend 2 Eternium to draw 2, take your pick, and you're going to flip it over. Now, this deck is filled with a lot of things, some of which are allies. Well, you can see that Clawful is an ally, but he's only an ally to the 3 bad factions, the 3 evil factions. So if I were playing as a Masters of the Universe, I would have to fight Clawful here. Let's just look at another card. Too Bad is another ally I would have to fight. Let's keep going here. Here's a Beast. So this looks like Clawful. This is Clawful's species, but this Karakoni here is just a beast. He cannot ally with anybody, so no matter which faction you are taking on, you're having to attack him or battle him. And then last but not least, well, alright, it'd be a lot easier if I just went this direction. Then there are times where you have beasts like the Dilinks here. Looks a lot like Panther, but it's not. But you'll notice that he is a beast, not an ally, but he has all of the faction symbols. This beast, if you defeat him in Wilds combat, you can pay 2 Eternium to tame the beast, and then you gain him as an ally. So there are times where you have allies who are only for good guys, like Orko here. He is only going to ally with the masters, so if you were playing as Skeletor, you would have to fight him. The other types of encounters here are simply events. You read the flavor text at the top, and then you do what happens at the bottom. Sometimes you have to pay stuff. Sometimes it gives you something. There's success and failure text. It's all very straightforward. So that is Brave the Wilds. Or if you happen to be in a location with this queue here, you can go on a quest. So that's pretty much the same thing as Braving the Wilds, except you're going to go into the quest deck. So this deck is pretty much always going to be the same no matter which scenario you're playing. It's just the encounters deck, whereas the quest deck is going to change from scenario to scenario. So this just happens to be the Fractures in Time quest deck, and it's very similar to the encounters deck. There's going to be some events we've already looked at here that you just have to do things. Some of them may be keep a card in front of you type event, or there's going to be what's called epic beasts. So these guys are all beasts. They're not going to ally with anybody. They can be tamed. That's why they have this Eternium value here, but they're much deadlier creatures. But otherwise, either way, if you are either in the wilds or in a location where there's a quest token, as an action, you can take on either the quest or the wilds by flipping over the top deck of whichever respective pile you need to take on. That's it. That's all you have to do as options for actions you can take on your turn. Now, if you are ever in a situation where you enter an area with an opposing faction member, so if He-Man walks into Skeletor's space, an epic battle is going to ensue. This is not an action you have to take. This is just the result of you guys both being in the same location. That can happen in the wilds. It can happen in an outpost. We're going to talk about battle here later on in the video. But just so you know, pretty much your action choices are move, mobilize soldiers, brave the wilds, go on a quest. If it is nighttime, and only at night, so when this token here is on a moon space, you can rest, which means you heal up all of your health, but it takes 2 actions to do it. So basically you're giving up your entire turn in the night to rest, and you can only rest in the night. Now, we talked earlier about free actions that you can take on your turn. So besides the 2 actions that you get to choose, you can do these other actions. They are optional, but certain criteria has to be met. One is that you can trade with another hero. So if He-Man and Man-at-Arms are in the same space, they can trade items. They can trade vehicles, equipment, spells, whatever it may be. Or you can take a merchant action. Now, this is one of the actions that does not make a whole lot of sense to me, thematically wise at least. So, if at the end of your turn you control a merchant location that you would like to purchase from, and that could be your mini figure, it could be someone else's mini figure, or it could be a soldier, you can take a merchant action, one merchant action, in one of those locations. So if you at the beginning of the game just kind of spread yourself out and say have a soldier in each one of these locations, you at any point in time, even if you are way over here in Lava Lake, can purchase a vehicle, or you can purchase equipment, or you can purchase spells. Now, anytime, and honestly I don't know why they don't have you do this in setup, but it's the instructions say that whenever the first person controls an outpost of a specific merchant type, you are to reveal 4 cards from that deck. So, and these are going to be the same. They're going to be available for purchase by both factions. It doesn't matter what 4 are available, but say you end your turn, you control a merchant vehicle outpost, you can take a look at these 4 cards. that are up here. So we got 2 Sky Sleds, a Blaster Hawk, and a Battle Ram. You'll notice that there is Eternium cost up here. You simply pay that much cost, and then you gain this as a vehicle. Now, normally you would only be able to have one vehicle at a time, but for example, Sky Sled here says a hero may equip both Battle Ram and Sky Sled. So if you have Blaster Hawk, too bad so sad, but that's a flying vehicle. So it's a Sky Sled. But the Battle Ram, say, is going to give you more movement. Anyways, they give you bonus statistics. Everything's explained here on the bottom. Vehicles are pretty straightforward, nice to have. Definitely usually helps you increase the movement. There are ways to shuffle these, the 4 cards you can see, to the bottom of the deck and choose 4 more. But otherwise, there is no... You basically are staring at the same 4 cards until somebody purchases one, and then you reveal the next one off the top of the deck. Equipment cards have a lot more variety. So you have consumables. These are things that you use once and then they are discarded. You have things like armor or artifacts, which are usually weapons, and potions. I think that's pretty much it. Artifacts, traps are consumables, magic potions. So this is, the main way to increase your defense or to get like a health potion, things like that. And then last but not least, we have our spells. Spells are wide variety of what they do. Some heal, some do damage, some give you movement. Either way, these are consumables, so you use them once and then you discard them, and they also tell you when you can use them. So for example, this one here says you use it on the map. This one here says you use it during combat. This one, map or combat. Map or combat. Map or combat. That's probably most of them. So it's whether you're using it in combat or whether you're using it like during your turn just to move around the map. So those are the 2 free actions. Again, you can do them both. So if you happen to be in the same space as someone else, you can trade. Or you could say take a purchase action and then trade, but you can only purchase from one location. So you got to pick one. Am I doing spells? Am I doing equipment? Or am I doing vehicles? All right, so we have brought Clawful back out here, and let's just say that we are playing as He-Man. So He-Man and Clawful don't get along. They have encountered each other in the wilds. Now they need to battle. So what you're going to do is you're going to, when you're battling in the wilds, you're going to look at this body number. Not a great title for a stat, but there's your body number, your body count. So your body count here is 7. All of them, for the most part, in the core box are 7. Anyways, you're going to take a number of your faction's dice equal to your body stat, and you're going to roll them. All right, so we know He-Man's 7 here. I'm going to move this off to the side and go. Okay, not a great roll on my part. But what you can do at this point is set aside any successes. That's going to be a sword or a double sword. And then you can take any number of this symbol, which is re-roll. You can pick up this dice and any other dice of your choice and re-roll them. Okay, and I missed. Super bad roll. So for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to roll these out to try and get some other hits here. So that's decent. All right. So once you have finished doing your re-rolls and you have your set dice, what you're going to then do is have to assign them to these 3 symbols here in the middle of the beast card. So he has an attack stat, a defense stat, and a health stat. In order to defeat Clawful, you need to reduce his health to 0. So I would need to put 4 successes or 4 swords on him, but only after I've gotten rid of his defense. So 1 sword to his defense, then 4 swords to his health, and he is defeated. But attack happens simultaneously, so if I focus solely on his defense and his health, and I don't block any of his attack, then he's going to hit me for 3. So what I would do at this point, and in my opinion, I wish these symbols were bigger, just so there was more space to pair the dice up. But let's just say here, I'm going to assign this one to his 1 shield. So his defense is gone. Now I need to take him out. So I'm going to assign these 4 to his health. And then I have 2 left over. So I can actually block 2 out of his 3. He's going to hit me for 1, but I have defeated him. I could, if, say, this was what I rolled. Say, I rolled poorly like I did earlier, and I'm realizing, ooh, I can't defeat him because I gotta commit this to the 1, and then I have to commit these 3. He would still have 1 health left, and he would hit me for 3. He would get away, and I would lose 3 health. So what I could do is instead assign these to block. So I took out his defense, I blocked his 3. He's going to get away, but I'm not going to take any damage. Your double swords cannot be split. So whichever stat you add them to, they have to stay at. So I would not want to assign my double sword to the 1 defense, because then I lose the other sword. That's it. That is Wild's combat. Super straightforward. Very simple. The only thing that I wish was different about Wild's combat is that people had different body numbers, because everybody's just rolling 7 dice at this point until you have some equipment or things like that. But also, some of their special abilities or surge abilities, and maybe some of them do, and I just haven't come across them, actually changed how you do Wild's combat. For right now, there is no difference between He-Man taking on a Wild's combat and She-Ra taking on a Wild's combat, or even Man-at-Arms taking on a Wild's combat. At the beginning of the game, they're each going to roll 7 dice, and that's it. Once you know the body stat number, it's just rolling these same exact dice, and you're done. Like, give me a unique die for the character, or something on their card that affects what happens during Wild's combat. I don't know. But this is the best combat in the game, in my opinion. Once you defeat somebody like this, you're going to gain this bonus here, which is taking your combat deck and looking through this deck of plus symbols at the bottom, finding in this case, a +2 card, adding it to your deck, but also removing something of your choice from your deck. So this is a way to call out the weaker cards from your battle deck. If you come across someone who's an ally, so say Skeletor encountered Clawful here, he doesn't need to fight him. He's going to just pay 2 Eternium to gain him as an ally. He also gains the +2. If he can't afford Clawful or doesn't want to have him as an ally, say he already has one, he could just let him go. He gets 1 Eternium for his efforts, and this just goes into a discard pile. Beasts, no matter what, both sides have to fight. But then if they can become be tamed, you pay the 2, you get the bonus, and that's pretty much it as far as Wild's combat is concerned. Alright, so here are our battle boards for epic combat. Just kind of a random map on the back. So very different from Wild's combat. In epic combat, you're going to be using your combat deck here. So every faction has a unique combat deck. Here is the evil villains, here's the masters, Rise of the Snake Men have a green one, and Hordak has one. At the beginning of the game, you're going to have your starter deck, which has your symbol in the bottom corner. I think everybody's starter deck is pretty close to the same. And then you're going to have a set of cards that you can add to it. So keep these off to the side. These don't need to be shuffled. You're always going to get to search through them. But your starter deck of 21 cards here is going to be shuffled. And you're going to have it face down in front of you. And the beginning of every epic combat, you guys are going to go back and forth, starting with the attacking player or the aggressor, the person who moved into someone else's space. And you're going to take one card, you're going to look at it, and you're going to play it down. If it's one of these cards with a symbol on it, you're going to play it face up. If it's a card like this with a number on it, you're going to play it face down. Now, you keep doing this, going back and forth. I take a turn, you take a turn, I take a turn, you take a turn. So, you would do things like this. You're going to go back and forth until each of you have placed 4 cards only. And there are a few ways, and we'll talk about here in a second, to get more than 4 cards out there. But for the most part, it's 4 cards, and then you're going to flip. You're going to determine who attacks first, and then just be comparing attack stats versus defense stats and vice versa. So, as you're revealing your one card at a time, if you ever don't like the card you see, you can take your intellect value here, which is the kind of evil Lyn headdress symbol. And this means per round of combat. So putting out up to 4 cards is 1 round. She-Ra can discard the card she just drew to redraw twice. He-Man can only do it once. Orko can do it 4 times. So that stat actually makes sense. That's a little variety in it. So that's a way to change what card you've drawn. If you get, like, say, +1 and you really don't want it, you can use your intellect and swap it out. Also, a rule that you have to follow as you're placing cards is that, say I place my first card in my attack row, my next card has to go in either my defense or initiative. So you cannot just stack all of your cards in one section. You have to alternate and place in a new section each progressive card. So if I play my first one here, my next one, say, could go here, and then I could put my next one here, and my 4th one could go up here. Or I could skip initiative completely and go here, 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 here. Doesn't matter. Now, there are some cards in here that do other things, and so let's look at those now real quick. So here we have this time swap card. This is very handy for rearranging your board after everybody's flipped, and you can kind of see what their attack and defense is. So this one says, place near your combat grid may be activated to swap 2 of your cards, but you're also going to draw another card. So you place this one down, it gives you the ability to swap after all cards have been revealed, but you also get to draw another one. So say you draw +2, you would place this one face down. So remember, all the ones with a picture or words are going to be placed face up. Here is your surge card. So you still have to pick a zone to put this in, and it has to be different from where you just placed it. This one counts as a +1, but it also is going to activate your hero's surge ability. So at the beginning of the battle, you needed to have decided what type of weapon you are using, and everybody has 2. So is She-Ra using her Sword of Protection, or is she using her Bubble Blast? None of that matters unless you activate a Surge card. If she decides she's using her Sword of Protection, she would gain +2 defense with the Surge card. The Surge card can be up here, it doesn't matter, or it could be down here. Bubble Blast, she would immediately heal 2. Sometimes it does matter, though, where the Surge card is. For example, He-Man's Sword of Power here, he gains +1 in the Surge card's zone. So this is already giving him +1. It's essentially turning it into a +2. So if a Surge card is here, he's gaining +1 from this card, defense, and +1 from his Sword of Power. Or if he's going up against the Epic Beast, it's +2. But the opponent's matching zone gains -1. So again, if I put this here, He-Man's getting an additional +1 defense, but say Skeletor, who I'm going up against, his defense has a -1 in it. All because of the Surge card. Alright. What other cards do we have here? There's only a couple. So here is I believe this is a Flux card. This one actually does not count towards your 4-card limit. So this is basically like a free little +1 and then draw again. So you would again play this one face up so that your opponent knows you're not cheating. You would stick it in an area and then you would draw again. Place, if it's a number, just place that one face down. But again, it's got to go in a different zone. And then last but not least, we have this one here, which simply just says immediately discard this card and draw 2 more. You pick one and discard the other. So this is a way to give yourself a little bit of an option. These are nice to have, but they don't do anything. They're similar to this, the tie-in card here. They don't even go on to the battle mat. And again, you would play that one face up so your opponent knows you're not cheating. So let's just play out some cards here and talk about what happens when you flip these all over. So after your round of 4 going back and forth and any redraws that you want to take have happened, you're going to flip all these cards over, and then at this point, this is when you would activate, say, a time card, or your hero or ally may have an ability that triggers during this phase. Once you have done all of that, you're going to compare initiative. Now, this completely does not make sense to me as far as the game is concerned. Your initiative stat is what you have accumulated here plus what's on your board. So He-Man would have 2 because he put nothing on his board and he's got a base stat of 2. Skeletor has a base stat of 1 and he added 1 to his board, so he also would have 2. In this case, neither one of them would gain initiative, but He-Man would attack first. Gaining initiative does 2 things. One, it's like a surprise attack. You get to ping the enemy for 1 if you win initiative. Alright, so you could put 1 real quick damage on Skeletor. It also means you attack first. So if in your attack you're able to reduce your opponent to 0 health, they're knocked out, they go back to their fort, and you don't have to worry about it. So that does make a difference. And thematically, having a base stat for initiative makes perfect sense to me. Your other 2 stats, it's only what's on the board. There is no base attack stat for He-Man. For a game like this, that's all about like the strength of the character and the attack, how does He-Man not have a base stat that is, say, higher than Triclops or Orko? Orko and He-Man could have the exact same battle. Or, let's see here, Orko and Skeletor here, who have the same initiative. Orko seemingly has no disadvantage against Skeletor. Now, I love Orko. He's a great character, but head-to-head battle between him and Skeletor, I don't think would be that fair. Maybe it would be. I don't know. It bothers me that there is no base attack and defense stat on each of these cards. I feel like it would be much more thematic for He-Man to be much more prepared to take on a fully healthed, beefy foe like Skeletor than, say, Orko. But as far as the game is concerned, it does not matter. Now, once you've determined initiative, if you're going first, at this point it's very straightforward. You are comparing, if you're attacking first, you compare your attack stats. So in this case it's 3 to his defense, which in this case is 4. He blocks it all, nothing happens. As long as you have not knocked him out, he then gets the chance to attack you back. He only played 1. You are blocking for 3, plus your surge is 4. And actually we technically forgot that we gave his a negative zone, so that would be a 3 to your 3. He's still blocking it all. Anyways, you basically just attack, you take damage, and then you get to decide whether or not you are going to continue this attack. Now, the person that decides that is the attacker, the aggressor. If the aggressor wants to retreat, they can choose to retreat after a round. Otherwise, you take the cards that you just played, you put them in like a discard pile, you set them off to the side, and you go again. You'd go through this same process again, where you draw and place up to 4 cards on your board, but now your deck is a little bit smaller. And eventually, you'll run out of cards in your deck, and then you have to stop combat. But that's it. That's epic combat. Quick little note of my soapbox here. I think this is fine. I like the back and forth system. You know, choosing, I put one here. What is it? Is it a +1? Is it a +3? Here's, where am I putting my surge cards? I kind of wish the surge cards were all face down, so you wouldn't quite know if you were getting that extra little punch. But I'm okay with them being face up. It does slow the game down, though, when epic combat is this quick back and forth, stare at a card, decide, analysis paralysis can set in. But it is baffling to me in a miniatures game like this, where there's a little bit of a skirmish happening, that each character doesn't have a base attack and defense stat. Now, the only difference between epic combat against, say, another miniature in the game, another foe, and an epic beast, which would come in the quest deck, is the fact that the beast has all of their stats pre-printed on their card, so you know what you're going up against. The epic beast also gets to roll this epic die. So this is a D10 here, which various stuff. And so before you start playing cards, you're going to see what they are going for, and you're going to roll this. Now, if it rolls this symbol, you're going to activate their surge effect here, and that's going to be in effect. It's like a passive ability. Or they may get +1 to their initiative, or +2 to their defense, or +1 to their attack. Whatever it is, that just sits there, and you add it to their stats. So everything is here similar to what a foe has. You just happen to know, when facing an epic beast, exactly what you have to go up against. So you know they've got 2 defense, so anything higher than 3 on your attack is it going to get through. You know they're attacking for 4. So you need to put up at least 4 defense, or you're going to take damage. You know he's got a super high initiative, so is it worth it to put it all into initiative just to ping him for 1? Take all of that into effect, but otherwise you're still shuffling up your combat deck. You're still playing up to 4 cards into your battle board here, and then you're comparing statistics. If you defeat the epic beast, you can tame it. You also gain, and in this example here, you would gain a time card out of your plus deck. So you would go back here and you would say, oh, there's one. I can add this to my deck and I can remove whatever I want. Most likely it's going to be a +1. That's the only difference between epic combat against an epic beast and epic combat against a foe in the game, another villain or hero. Now, there are rules for faster epic combat, which I appreciate. And those rules utilize, one of them is simply just to play 1 round of epic combat. Whoever has inflicted the most damage is the winner. The other one has to retreat. The other way involves using these wild battle dice, which, again, I think is the better form of combat, but we're still lacking base statistics here. Archon. So that is basically it for how to play Masters of the Universe, Fields of Eternia. So again, you're battling back and forth, and you are attempting to obtain victory points. You're taking on quest cards, you are taking on encounters in the wild, you're battling your foes, there's, you're trying to meet your objectives on your quest card. So every scenario and every game is going to play a little differently. Every time your round marker reaches one of these skulls, you're going to read an event based on the scenario that you're playing. So that's going to change things. Sometimes it'll put more quest tokens out. Sometimes you have to do like a skill check or something, rolling dice. Other times it may just deal straight damage. Who knows? And that's it. That is essentially it. Now, I mentioned earlier I had several soapbox speeches that I wanted to discuss, and I'm going to get this last one off my chest here at the end of the video. So if all you came for was the rules overview, you can leave now. But in my opinion, this game is too slow, and I'm going to cover all this in a review video where I'm going to compare this with Clash for Eternia. I feel like Wilds combat and quest encounters need to be if you're there at the end of your turn. So, for example, if you go out into the wilds and there's a beast roaming around, you don't just get to choose whether or not you're going to encounter the beast. Now, that could be a passive ability, say for Beastman. Beastman could say, well, he knows how to hide, he knows how to get around beasts, he knows how to talk to them. He may have the choice to forego a wilds battle. Other than that, everyone else is going to have to deal with whatever event they stumble across or whatever beast is in the woods with them. It would also speed up the game, because at the beginning of the game, if you say want to, get to an outpost, you're pretty much spending your entire turn just going 1-2, and that's it. Boom, I'm done. Everybody else goes 1-2, everybody spreads out, everybody takes on a village, and you move the thing. And then everybody spends a turn fortifying that village, fortifying this village, and fortifying this village, and then maybe we'll move into the wilds. Move into the wilds, move into the wilds. But then at that, my turn is done. Then the next turn, now you're finally actually taking on quests and wilds. It just seems to make the game very slow, especially at the beginning, when moving and wilds and or quest encounters don't just happen automatically like epic battles do. I feel like they should be something that, you moved into the wild space, you got to take on one of these. Say you don't defeat the beast, say it gets away, you got to push back. Something like that would be much more thematic in my opinion, and would speed things up. So you could say, all right, well, I really want to fortify these, and then I'll move here. I put myself in the wilds, so now I'm going to have to deal with it. Or maybe I want to, get further away, so I'm going to go 1-2 and get all the way up here from Castle Grayskull. Well, now I'm in the wilds. Instead of that just being 1-2 and then nothing happens, my entire turn is just 2 movement. So, I love the IP. I think this game has a lot of character. I love the map. I love the artwork on the map. I love the little pawn heads, and I love the fact that this is a He-Man dudes on a map game. I just think that there definitely could be some tweaks to improve this game. It's not lost. They easily, in a second edition or whatever you want to call it, an expansion, could change a lot of these mistakes. But just going to leave the rest for my review video. So if you have any questions, if you would like to see a video on the solo mode specifically, let me know and I can cover that in a video. If you have questions about the alternate battle combat mechanics, let me know. I can make a video on that. And that's pretty much going to do it for now for our coverage of Masters of the Universe Fields of Eternia. Again, this is a European release, not easily available in the United States, but for those of you who are in the United States, I got my hands on a copy. I got my hands on a copy through eBay. I did an all-in package, so it was expensive, but it wasn't that much more expensive than I would have paid if I had been able to back the Kickstarter, paid for shipping, all in, all that stuff. So it will eventually become more and more available here in the U.S. through secondary markets or whatever you want to call it. So this is not something that if you live in the US you just have to forget about. So I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day.